Most people struggle with budgeting because their system or their budget that they create, it doesn't match reality. They either make it too strict, they make it too complicated, or they base it on this like perfect version of themselves that doesn't actually exist. So in this video, I am going to walk you through the exact budget system that I personally use. This is a real system that helps me control my money. I completely avoid stress and I can consistently save and invest money every single month. So if you feel like you have a lack of control of your money or you feel like you should be doing better financially, but you don't know where your money keeps going, this video will show you a very realistic way to fix that. So before we jump into the video though, comment down below. Do you currently follow a budget? I am very curious to see what people do because I feel like if you are not tracking your money, I am not saying it has to be every single dollar, but if you are not tracking your money at all, I feel like it is hard to know how much you are going to consistently save or invest each month, but that is just my opinion. I am very curious to hear what people say. Now, before I actually break down the budget, I do want to explain why I feel like most people's budgets fail in the first place. I feel like there's three main reasons. The first one is that they read too strict. The second one is that they read too complicated. Or the third one is that they rebuilt on like fake behavior, like, oh, I can follow this. But like in reality, they haven't been and they never going to follow it. Starting out with budgets that are too strict, I feel like sometimes people create budgets on who they think they are, but not who they actually are. In regards to their spending, a lot of times people will create a budget and they'll say, hey, I am not going to go out to eat at all. There is going to be no impulse spending and I am perfectly disciplined. But like that is not reality. You could have social plans that come up where somebody invites you to, go get dinner, go get lunch somewhere, and then you are going to spend money on that. Some people do like to spend money when they re-stress. That is very common, or there is just random expenses, or maybe it is just a bad day. So, maybe you were planning on, making food at home and you just had a shitty day at work and you are going to go get food instead. Like it is really common for these things to happen. And I feel like when budgets are too strict on people, it feels more like a punishment, like it is something that they really hate. And so you don't want it to feel that way. You want it to feel like an actual plan that you can follow. Because if your budget just gets rid of any fun or enjoyment that you have in life, you are just going to eventually quit it. Like you are not going to stick to it. And that is not what we want. We want to have something that we can stick to long term. So that is what could happen if budgets are too strict, but also if budgets are too complicated, the same thing can happen. I mean, it is a pretty simple concept. If a budget takes up way too much of your mental energy, you are probably going to quit using it after a while. Maybe use it for a couple weeks or a month or a couple months, but after a while, it is just going to be too hard to keep tabs on everything. And I think when people make budgeting too complicated, they have way too many categories. They retracking every single purchase. They constantly updating their spreadsheet or some app that they use. And they may start out motivated. But again, 1 month, 2 months, however long it takes, they eventually going to quit because it is just going to feel like a chore to them. It is going to feel like a burden. It could also take a while and they don't want to spend the time doing it, or maybe they fall behind once and then they just give up. And I feel like most people quit budgeting not because they don't care, but because it is just exhausting. And that is what happens if you have a very complicated budget. In my opinion, I feel like a good budget, it should feel like a plan. It is not a restriction. And it also should feel like a system that you can just repeat. It is not like some guessing game every time. In my opinion, when it comes to budgeting, this should be a system where you can control your money. You can still enjoy the things you want to enjoy, and you are not going to hate your life. I want you to be able to have fun and enjoy things, but also if you can save and invest, that is an amazing thing because as I talk about, the earlier you start investing, the better. And I say that nonstop on this channel. So let us actually jump into the budget template that I use. Now, I want to be very clear here that I am not using my actual numbers, but this is the actual template that I use. I update this every 2 weeks very consistently, and how I structure it is based around 2 paychecks per month. So even if you are paid bi-weekly, I still think you should budget on 2 paychecks per month, whether you are semi-monthly or bi-weekly. The only difference here is semi-monthly is you are normally paid the 1st and the 15th, whereas bi-weekly you are just paid every other week. With the bi-weekly paycheck system, you are paid every 2 weeks. So normally there is 2 months in the year where you are actually going to get 3 paychecks. But normally let us just budget for 2 paycheck. And like I said a second ago, I don't do a monthly budget. I track my expenses every time I get paid. So I am normally trying to stay on top of this every couple of weeks. And I am still looking at my money along the way. So I am going to throw up this screenshot here, and this is the middle of the month paycheck. So let us pretend that somebody has $200 in their checking account and then they just got paid. And let us say your after-tax pay that you got was $2,000. So your total cash that you now have sitting in your checking account is $2,200. So that is the starting point. That is the money that has came in. This is the amount of cash you have to mess around with. Now, I like to break my budgeting down between needs and wants and then anything left over and try to keep a little cushion we can save or invest. So I will explain all this in a second, starting out with needs. Again, these are all fake numbers, but I do feel like it is a pretty realistic budget with some of the numbers I am using, especially if you are just like a single person and ID say 23, 24, 25. If you are in your early to mid 20s, I feel like this is somewhat realistic. Of course, it depends where you live though, so your needs are absolute necessities. This is what you need to live, right? You got to pay your rent, you have to pay your electric bill, you have to pay your car payment, you have to pay gas, groceries, and I do put credit cards in the needs category because I do feel like you should be zeroing out your credit cards. And I'll talk about that a little bit later because this is the one category where you could really screw yourself, but overall, these are all necessities. And when you are looking at this $1,055 number, the needs, this is only for half of the month. So the rent plus fees, that is not $685 for the full month, that is half. And let me break down the rent plus fees just to explain here, because typically when you are renting a lot of companies, they will include other things. It is not just the rent. So maybe you have to pay for trash and that is $20 a month, or your internet is $80 a month, and then your water, or maybe there are different amenities that you pay for, whether it is, a parcel like a package service if they have Amazon lockers, or maybe they have a swimming pool and a hot tub and a gym, or, pest control as well. And so that is the rent plus fees. It is your rent plus anything that you may get charged for from the apartment or the house that you are living at that is included into your rent. So as you can see here, I have $1,200 for the rent, $20 for trash, $80 for internet, $40 for water, $25 for the amenities, and then $5 for pest control. This makes a total of $1,370 for the month. So if you are breaking that down in between two paychecks, that means you need to save $685 for this. Now, some of the utilities are included in the fees here. You could also break this out if you wanted to, but you got the $685 here. Let us pretend your electric bill is around $100 a month, which I do feel like is pretty normal for most people. So, you got $100 here, split that in half. That is going to be $50 that you are going to save every month for that. And then car payment, I am assuming a $300 monthly car payment. Obviously, this could be different. You could have a paid off car. It really just depends on the person, but we just running hypothetical numbers here. So the car payment, $300, split that in half, you got $150. Now, yes, I do not split in half $50 for me. That covers me for 2 weeks on gas. I am not necessarily getting gas every week, but I normally spend, say between like $35 and like $45-ish every couple 2-3 weeks on gas. And of course, this depends what kind of car you drive, the cost of gas in the state you live in. But for me, this is just what works. And I do feel like it is pretty realistic for a lot of people. So the $50 is the first number that we're not going to cut in half here. Like that is assuming that the $50 here will keep you completely filled up on your tank for at least 2 weeks. Now, credit cards we have at 0. We will revisit this later, but then groceries we have $120. So this is assuming that basically if you have $120 right now, that should last you for 2 weeks of groceries. Again, this is assuming you are a single person, you are not a full-on family. But I do think $60 a week is pretty good. I mean, if you are eating a lot of whole foods, which is what I try to do, I could easily get ground beef, chicken, and a bunch of foods, and even still just get a couple of processed things on the side. It easily cover me $60 a week, no problem. So these are your needs right here. So the sum of your needs, the $685 plus the 50, the 150, all these different numbers right here, that is $1,055. Now, your wants, these are recreational things. This could be like when you are going out to eat. This could be Netflix. This could be Spotify. This could be your gym membership. This is anything that you don't necessarily need to live, but these are things that you want to do. It could be your budget to go out to the movies. It could literally be anything that is just recreational that you want to save up money for. That way you are accounting for it. All right, so I'm assuming here you have a standard Netflix plan, which I believe is around $18 a month. Spotify, I'm assuming, is $12 a month. So there's your 6, and then the gym is $50 a month. So that is going to be 25 because we redoing half of it. Now, the leftover section, this is the fun part. This is basically your fun money, is you take the $2,200, you subtract out your needs, you subtract out your wants, and that is what is left over, which makes perfect sense. Now, below the leftover, I have this section called the cushion. This to me is what is going to get me by if there's any small little emergencies that could come up. And what I normally do every time I get paid is I take the rent plus fees. Not all of the needs, just the rent plus fees. And I move that into a different account. So that could be a savings account, that could be another checking account, but I just move it off to the side. So that $685, I am going to just go throw that in savings for the second paycheck. And then the remaining money, whether it is the $50 for the electric bill, the $150 for the car payment, the gas $50, the groceries, that is still going to stay in my checking account. So your cushion is going to be the $500 plus these remaining categories that you are going to keep. But we're still factoring in all of the needs into the leftover. So I found that this gives me actually a pretty sizable cushion because if I add up the electric bill, the car payment, all these other sections below, rent and fees, but above the wants, that is an extra $370. So that explains the cushion there. Now, finally, if you want to look at your saving or your investing money, all that does is it just takes your leftover amount of money minus your cushion, and your cushion you can set to whatever number you want to. But as you can see here, it is $605. So after you factor in all of your needs, all your wants, a little bit of cushion left over, you could then invest $600 from that paycheck, which is pretty nice. And I also have a little 401k section right below. So, technically you are investing more than 605, assuming you are just throwing a little bit of money into the 401k. And you could also save this money. You could do whatever you want with it, or you could move this money into a savings account. So maybe out of that 605, maybe you invest 300, maybe you put 305 in a high yield savings account, whatever you want to do. But this is just what works for me. This is the middle of the month paycheck and how I approach that. Now, let us talk about the month end. So the month end is basically the exact same thing, except we're going to look at the full month S amount. So again, you get paid another $2,000. Your paycheck S the exact same, and then we're going to take your checking plus your savings plus your paycheck. Normally at this point towards the end of the month before, rent is due, which is typically the first or the second of the month for most people, I will then take that $685 and I will move it back into my checking, but I still want to factor it in because this is the total amount of cash after I move it. It is my paycheck plus what I already have in checkings plus the savings. So that is $2885. The needs is just everything you saw before, but it is doubled. So then I take the full rent amount. So instead of having to pay the $1,370 at once, I've already saved that $685 because I am moving that back into checking. But hey, the rent plus fees is $1,370. We already got half of it covered. Let S factor that in right now. Here is the total month S cost, the $100 for the electric bill. It was $50 for the first half of the month. For the full month, we reassuming it is $100. So you want to factor that in as well. The car payment goes to $300. Now gas again, we just keeping that extra $50 to last us another 2 weeks until we get back to the middle of the month. And then credit cards, I have it zero, assuming you zero it out. And then groceries, same thing as gas. You are just going to want to keep that $120 for a couple of weeks. At least that is what I would do here. And then the ones is still being factored in as well because you got the $80, which is just double what you saw before. So it is the full Netflix cost, the full Spotify cost, the full gym cost. So then left over after all of this, you have $865, which again, that is going to be the $2885 minus the needs. Minus the wants, you are going to keep a $500 cushion. But again, some of these bills might not be due the first of the month, which is why I don't T-move everything from the needs category into my savings account. Your car payment could be due on the 10th of the month. Your electric bill could be the 17th of the month. You know what I mean? So you want to factor these things in without necessarily separating them out. You could separate it if you want to, and then just keep moving it back and forth. But for me, again, this is just what works best for me. It is very simple. So I keep that $500 cushion, but I still have the money for the electric bill. I still have the money for the car payment, the gas. None of this stuff goes away. It is not like you are only going to have $500 left over. You have $865 left over, and then you are going to keep a $500 cushion, which leaves you $300+ to invest now or save or do whatever you want with it. For me, I actually like budgeting per Pascal Yikek and not per M-onth because it also prevents a lot of overspending early on. And I feel like when people budget monthly, you could spend a lot the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then you don't have any money left over for fun or anything for the back half of the month. And that to me is just very stressful. I cannot do that. So you don't want to run out of money mid-month. And I do feel like this system that I have set up, it splits your rent across both checks. It splits your bills across pay periods. And it really does match how money arrives into your account so that you are just following everything real time. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and this is where you can really get yourself in trouble, is that credit card category. Because again, when we go look at the middle of the month paycheck, you have $600 you can do whatever you want with. You could spend that $605, you could just go below that if you want. It does not matter. But if your credit card is, let's say, $500, if you ran it up $500 in the past 2 weeks, now you only have $105 left to save or invest. So that is the category that can get very dangerous. And this is why I talk a lot about being smart with credit cards. Like it is okay if you don't need to use a credit card to budget properly. I think a lot of people can still be very successful without a credit card. I really don't think you need it. Obviously, if you have no credit score and if you are pretty young and you still need to build up your credit, use a credit card, use it responsibly. But it is very easy to just go run your credit card up and not have to deal with it until the next time you get paid. And I occasionally have also found myself doing this, but the best way for me to just stay on top of the credit card is basically to zero it out every couple of days, because then what happens is that extra money in my checking account by the time I get to the next paycheck, yeah, it could be a little bit lower. It could be, $300, $400, $500, but then my credit card number is zero. And I think that is a lot better than having, let's say 600 or 800 in the account, but then your credit card balance is 700 cuz. In reality, you don't actually have that much money. So it is very important to stay on top of the credit cards. And the thing that is tough about them is they don't post balances immediately. So you just want to be very aware of that. As well as with some credit cards, you could pay it off and it doesn't actually hit your checking account or whatever your money cash account is in for a couple of days. So you want to be aware of that too. But I do feel like having like the leftover section, the cushion, and then the saving investing flow really works well for me. It shows me my money that is left over after all of my needs and my wants. It gives me a little bit of a cushion if there is just a small emergency, and the remaining amount is going to go towards saving or investing. And the cushion can prevent things like credit card